ask you a quick question? It's small, but it's N-E-G-E-L-I-A. It's just Angela. That's okay. N-E-A-L. That's okay. That's okay. I appreciate you. My dad got creative.
Did you get a chance to read the minutes?
Yes.
When you're not talking, you push that button, right? As long as it's green, they can hear you.
Thank you.
I'm not even better. Oh, I have it. Nancy Buick from Sarah. Nobody?
No, I didn't. Good evening. It's the top of the hour. It's April 27th, 2021, and the Villa Rica Historical Preservation Commission is now in session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome all of you this evening. It's kind of nice to have an audience once in a while, and I want you to know that we all appreciate you coming. We don't have name tags. It's probably a good idea because if you don't know our names, then we can't get into trouble. But our commissioners, we have David Rogers, and we have Angela Lang, we have Alan White, and I noticed when Doug Lang, and I'm Nancy Mims. So again, thank you for coming, and I want to tell you that before we begin and look at the agenda, what you're going to be hearing tonight is a really long, drawn-out process that is aggravating and frustrating, probably hopeful. Some of you may have heard me say last week that I've only been in Carroll County for 33 years, my home in Villa Rica for 31. I'm passionate about Villa Rica. I love it. I think that we need to have sustained growth, and still keep the uniqueness of our city. A lot has happened in it. We have a pioneer city that we all should be proud of. And I want to specifically thank Ron for doing all of the writing that we've had to have done. Many of the suggestions that we've had for HPC have come from all of you. They've come from the Historical Society, and we're moving on as we continue to find other places that we want to honor. But Ron has done more than a yeoman's job. It's not a yeoman's job. He has done an excellent job of writing up all of the details that we had to have. And it's taken a long time. The process is a long process, and we're not finished, but you'll hear more about that tonight. So just so that you know how excited we are about what we're doing. Do we have an adoption of the agenda?
Second to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adopt the agenda. All in favor? Unanimous. Yep. Approval of the minutes. Have you all had a chance to read the minutes of the last meeting?
I motion to accept.
Second.
Yeah.
Okay. Second. Any discussion, any changes? All in favor? It's unanimous. Okay. We reached,
Actually, only the three of you could vote.
Yeah, there.
Only the three of you can vote, not the new members.
oh, okay. I thought they're not been sworn in.
No, they can't vote on minutes.
Oh,
Because they weren't at the last
They
one.
weren't at the last meeting.
okay. Thank you. Public comment. This is not yet for what we're doing, but if any of you have anything else to say. I want to add something else in here this morning. This morning I attended a joint meeting for the Evening and Noontime Lions Club. And this is something for us to think about in the future. It's not new business or old business, but it was brought to my attention that we don't have a plaque, commissioners and city, for Candler and discovery of Coca-Cola. And I saw in the women's magazine they're talking about the only thing they can talk about Coke is that it was originally done for headaches. But we have absolutely no plaque in Villa Rica. And here, we're also very proud of that. But it was brought to our attention during a committee meeting this morning. And I promised them that I would at least mention the fact that it might be something for us to look into. Okay. Reports of other officers and board members.
Good evening, Commissioners. Last week on Tuesday, we kind of had a bit of a shuffle between our meetings, our regular meeting, which is tonight, and our workshop was last week, in order to accommodate the public noticing requirements for this meeting and for the last meeting actually, and also to accommodate the designation requirements for a local historic district. When it comes to the time period between the HPC meeting and the City Council meeting, which is on May 11th, we would have to have this meeting, of course, within that 15-day time period. So that's why our meeting is a little bit changed up as far as what week we meet. We usually meet on the third week. But that workshop meeting was, I think, informative for everybody who was in attendance, me included, just to hear the commentary from the public on the proposed local and national historic district designations that we're taking up tonight. And we, just for the public's, for the folks who have not or were not there, that meeting had a presentation. I gave a presentation on exactly the process of doing a local designation and a national designation, what the differences between the two are, and what the different requirements are for each. And I think that went over pretty well. So we actually had one person who did sign our support list, and for the public, there's actually a support and an objection list that's in the back there if you want to sign that after our meeting today, or if you have your mind made up on if you do support or object. And the reason that we're collecting that information is strictly so we know at least if there is a majority of property owners that do object or do support it, then we could carry that forward to the City Council, and that they'll be aware that there is a majority in either direction. So I do encourage everyone here tonight to please consider, if you are a property owner or a business owner in the downtown, and even just a citizen, to sign either list tonight, if you do feel comfortable with doing that. And that's all I have for the report.
Okay. Are there any other reports? Okay. Old business? Ron, do you have any old business?
No old business.
New business? We have a historic plaque presentation.
Yes, I have the plaque here. Doug, if you would come on down. Come on down. Looks like the last one, right? All right, so if you want to present it to him, give him any words.
This is really, really important because in the almost 4 years that I've been on the HPC Commission, I believe that at least 3 of our commissioners have had a plaque given to them, living in a historic home that's over 50 years old. And so our newest member here, Dr. Lang, congratulations, and you're home in 1902, and I want you to know that he has restored it beautifully. And another little caveat on there, his house is painted blue, and he went to Sherwin-Williams to get it painted, and he made up his own color. And apparently at Sherwin-Williams, if you make up your own color, you get to name it. And so his house is now known as Villa Rica Blue. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the recommendation to City Council for local historic district designations.
Yes. First and foremost, I'd actually like to preface my comments this evening with thank you to Dr. Mims and to the commissioners for your comments earlier in the meeting as far as what goes into these reports. And it really is a lot of moving parts that go into it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of things that the people don't see that really have to go into this. Constant communication with the state. Of course, these being prepared for the city council and for the HPC as well with the designation reports, which there's a lot that goes into those as well, and the different write-ups. And every time it feels like the first time because you have to do this over. Every time you do it, it seems like it's different, and the criteria is always moving and changing. So. I definitely want to thank you for that. It really does take a strong team in order to pull these types of things, pull them off successfully. I do want to thank you all for doing that, because you guys definitely have helped me tremendously with this undertaking. So tonight I want to start with the designation report. There's a couple different things I would like to go over besides just that, but there's also the criteria for designating a historic district, and I will read out the addresses and the different changes to these different addresses that are proposed, just for the record. And of course, we have to have a public comment period as well, which is mandated by the state. So after the local, I intend to turn it back over to the chair, and we can do a public comment period, and then for the local, and then a separate public comment period for the national. The Villa Rica, as a physical description, I'll give of this district as a part of the nomination report, and just so everybody is aware of the area that we're talking about. The Villa Rica Downtown Historic District, which is what is proposed tonight, encloses an area commencing at a point located half block between East Montgomery Street and West Wilson Street along South Carroll Road, and proceeds midway through the 100 block of East Montgomery Street along the private alleyway that's in the rear of the structures on the south side of the downtown. The boundary then turns south along the property boundaries between 109 and 115 West Wilson Street to reach West Wilson Street. At this point, the boundary continues west to a point between 115 and 117 West Wilson Street before continuing north back to the alleyway, and then proceeds west along the center of the alleyway to South Candler Street. The boundary then crosses mid-block across South Candler Street and continues parallel between East Montgomery Street and West Wilson Street to incorporate all buildings along East Montgomery Street to Westview Drive. That would be the 200 block of East Montgomery. The boundary turns north on Westview Drive and crosses East Montgomery Street to meet the Norfolk Southern rail line. At this point, the boundary proceeds west to another point perpendicular to North Avenue. The boundary then crosses the Norfolk Southern rail line and continues north on North Avenue to the center line of West Church Street before turning east and proceeding down the center line to a point between 101 Main Street and 111 Main Street. The boundary turns south between these two buildings to Temple Street, then proceeds down the north side of Temple Street to North Carroll Road. At this point, the boundary continues down the center line of North Carroll Road and crosses Main Street, the Norfolk Southern Rail Line, and East Montgomery Street to mid-block between East Montgomery Street and West Wilson Street at the beginning of the private alleyway. There are maps available for the public as well on the table over here on the side, and it has been included for the commissioners as well as part of your packets. So the existing alleyways, and just in a nutshell here, we have an existing, we don't have an existing local historic district, but we do have a national district on the north side of the railroad tracks in the encompassed area, as I read, but only on the north side. And we will be proposing tonight to create this local historic district with the following addresses. So I have to, unfortunately, I have to read them all.
Be a while.
It'll be 106 Temple Street, 101 Main Street, 110 Main Street, 113 Main Street, 129 Main Street, 141 Main Street, 209 Main Street, empty parcel that's on West Temple Street, parcel number V01-002-0001, 301 Main Street, 305 Main Street, 309 Main Street, 311 Main Street, 315 Main Street, 317 Main Street, 325 Main Street, another parcel vacant on West Church Street, V01-001-0008, another on West Church Street, vacant V01-001-0007, 105 North Avenue, 407 Main Street, 419 Main Street, another parcel V01-001-0004, the Railroad, V01-003-0009, also, on the south side of the downtown, it's 115 West Wilson Street, 100 West Montgomery Street, 104 West Montgomery Street, 108 West Montgomery Street, 110 West Montgomery Street, 112 West Montgomery Street, 118 West Montgomery Street, 120 West Montgomery Street, 122 West Montgomery Street, 126 West Montgomery Street, 130 West Montgomery Street, 132 West Montgomery Street, 200 West Montgomery Street, 208 West Montgomery Street, 210 West Montgomery Street, 214 West Montgomery Street, 216 Montgomery Street, 218 Montgomery Street, 222 West Montgomery Street, and 228 West Montgomery Street. So that would incorporate the entirety of all the properties for the local historic district. So with arriving with these properties, we had to look through the historic preservation, the local historic preservation ordinance for certain designation criteria. And I'll just read this part out. The criteria for selection of historic districts. A historic district is a geographically definable area which contains buildings, structures, sites, objects, and landscape features of a combination thereof, which has special character of special historic or aesthetic value of interest. Number 2, represents one or more periods, styles, or types of architecture typical of one or more eras in the history of the municipality, county, state, or region. And 3, causes such area by reason of such factors to constitute a visibly perceptible section of the municipality or county. So that's the criteria that the HPC would want to consider tonight as I continue on with my comments for both local and even for the national as well. So the cultural and architectural significance of the area. Villa Rica is located in the West Georgia county of Carroll, which borders Alabama to the west and a section of Douglas County. Villa Rica is a cross-rail community that was laid out in a gridiron pattern in response to the railroad that runs east to west through the center of town. The North Villa Rica Commercial Historic District comprises the northern half of the downtown and was established in 2002. The proposed unified downtown Villa Rica Historic District will succeed the North Villa Rica Commercial Historic District and include the area south of the railroad comprising the southern half of the downtown. Two properties located at 101 Main Street, which would be the Villa Rica Police Department and Municipal Court, which is the building we're in today, and 106 Temple Street, which is the Villa Rica Main Street offices and the amphitheater, which are currently included in the North Villa Rica Commercial Historic District, are proposed to be removed because of architectural changes over time that are not consistent with the downtown's period of significance. The proposed unified historic district includes the 2 blocks of mostly one-story brick commercial buildings between South Carroll Road and Westview Drive, and 4 blocks of mostly one-story brick buildings, commercial buildings between North Carroll Road and North Avenue. Most of the buildings in the district were built between 1900 and 1929, not including subsequent reconstructions of 4 buildings because of the Villa Rica explosion in 1957. The historic district includes segments of West Bankhead Highway, or West Montgomery Street, South Candler Street, South Carroll Road, West Wilson Street, North Candler Street, North Carroll Road, North Avenue, West Church Street, Main Street, Temple Street, and Loft Lane. Georgia State Highway 78 and 61 runs coterminous with West Bankhead Highway and West Montgomery Street, separates at the intersection with South Carroll Road, and Highway 61 continues parallel to West Bankhead Highway on the north side of the rail line on Main Street. Villa Rica was laid out in 1883. An advertisement promoted 94 beautiful lots at auction in Villa Rica, this village of gold. The town plan depicted in the ad comprises 11 blocks, 6 on the north side of the rail line and 5 fronting the south side of the rail line. Additional blocks were laid out north and south of these, forming a gridiron plan with the railroad line trending east to west through the center of the commercial district. This cross-rail plan is common in Georgia communities that were established along rail lines in the last decades of the 19th century. The public square is a large open space created by the half-depth block on Temple Street between Loft Lane and North Carroll Road. Now used for parking, the square is defined on 3 sides by the fronts of attached commercial buildings and the rail line to the south. The railroad depot, which was built in the 1880s, was located between the public square on the north side of the rail line and the rail line itself. The depot, which accommodated passengers, freight, and livestock, was demolished after 1950. The first City Hall building was constructed in the late 1800s and existed at 226 Montgomery Street until the early 1930s, and was moved across the tracks to the north side of the downtown on Temple Street. By 1905, Villa Rica included 20 businesses, 7 churches, a bank, a hotel, a newspaper, and a school with a faculty of 5. Villa Rica's prosperity shifted from gold to agriculture, especially cotton, when gold mining ended in 1926. The West Georgia Piedmont produced excellent staple upland cotton that was known for its superior staple and sheen. In an average season, 10,000 bales of cotton were purchased in Villa Rica. The buying and selling of cotton was a mainstay of Villa Rica's economy, and in the first decade of the 20th century, the town supported 3 cotton gins, 3 hosiery mills, 3 cotton warehouses, and a cotton oil mill. In the 1940s, the boll weevil and army worms devastated the region's cotton crops. Many buildings in the district feature a center entrance flanked by display windows and some decorative brickwork along the parapet. Many of the commercial buildings are plain, but some are highly ornate, such as 130 West Montgomery Street, which includes a raised corbel and raised window hoods, along with a stucco cornice and pinnacle. 10 large multi-paneled decorative second-floor windows, below 10 4-paneled transom windows. 141 Temple Street features arched windows and transom with raised keystones and a brick-paneled parapet. The buildings at 120, 122, 222, and 224 West Montgomery Street all feature dog-tooth brickwork above paneled entablature. I can never say that right. The buildings at 110, 214, and 216 West Montgomery Street are the only buildings in the district that have Spanish tile roof designs. 130, 200, and 216 West Montgomery Street, 315 Main Street, and 111 Main Street are the only 2-story buildings in the district. 100 West Montgomery Street is unique as the only building in the district featuring 3 segmentally arched brick openings for 2 storefront windows and 1 doorway in the center facing West Montgomery Street, and also features 3 window openings along South Carroll Road with brick segmentally arched window hoods, 3 recessed panels, and a gradual projection of the brickwork on the corbel facing West Montgomery Street. The buildings at 141 and 121 Main Street both feature mouse-toothed brickwork above paneled entablature. The Masonic Lodge, built in 1914 at 111 Main Street, is a 2-story commercial masonry building covered with stucco. One of its 2 street-level entrances and its 4 sash windows above are set within segmental arches. At 115 Wilson Street, E.T. Doyle & Sons, an animal feed business that has been in operation since 1902 and in downtown Villa Rica since 1925, is located in what was previously a planing mill / grist mill, according to the Sanborn maps. E.T. Doyle & Sons operated at 100 West Montgomery Street between 1925 and the 1950s before moving to the current location on West Wilson Street. The business has been a staple in the Villa Rica and New Georgia area since its founding and has contributed significantly to the city's agriculture community. This is the only building in the proposed district that does not face West Montgomery Street, and that also should be the north side as well. This is the only one on the south side that does not face West Montgomery Street. Most buildings in the historic district were built between 1900 and 1929 and retain a high level of historic integrity. Between 1923 and 1933, the buildings on both blocks of the district have been streamlined and attached. And again, this is only for the south side. Streamlined and attached, and some that had once been single retail had become double retail stores. Some buildings, however, have been altered so that they no longer convey their historic significance. The Villa Rica City Hall and Police Department, located at 101 Main Street at the corner of Velvin Lane, which is now North Carroll Road, was dramatically altered. The 1-story brick building was built in the colonial revival style in the 1950s. Later, the main facade and the overall form of the building was obscured by the addition of a full-width front porch, which has since been removed in favor of an ADA ramp and stoop. It is proposed for this building to be removed from the newly proposed district. The building on the west end of the 200 block of Temple Street is part of the Cap Company and was rebuilt in 1966. Because of the age of the renovation and shared history of the building with the development of the rest of the downtown area, this building can now be considered contributing. The block of the buildings on Main Street on the west side of the square have had awnings, shed roof porches, and in one case, a second story added. These changes, however, do not obscure the intact historic commercial storefronts, and the buildings are counted as contributing to the historic district. The block bounded by West Montgomery Street, West Wilson Street, South Candler Street, and South Carroll Road is a series of 18 buildings, 12 of which are to be included in the district. Based on the 1923 Sanborn map, this section of the district consisted of a planing mill and grist mill, several retail stores, an abandoned motion picture house, 2 restaurants, and 2 barbershops. Star Department Store, which was located at 100 West Montgomery Street and was started by David Bieber, who owned another department store with the same name in Carteret, New Jersey, operated from the 1950s until the 1960s. Several buildings were constructed by Irby Albert Marchman Sr., a local farmer and merchant and part of the locally significant Marchman family between 1895 and 1915. The Powell Marchman building at 130 West Montgomery Street was built by Dr. Henry Ryan Marchman's brother Irby in 1895 and housed Powell Marchman Drug Company and Dr. Marchman's offices. While the 100 block of West Montgomery Street retains most of its pre-1960s aesthetic, the 200 block of West Montgomery Street has seen some historic integrity degradation in more recent years. 208 West Montgomery, the site of the Bank of Villa Rica's headquarters, has been altered into a 1970s contemporary style and has no features of the original front facade that remain. Several other buildings in this block also have been altered from their original appearance, including 210, 214, 216, 218, 220, and 228 West Montgomery Street. Many buildings now feature stucco or stone fronts and new storefront windows. The block bounded by West Montgomery Street, South Candler Street, West Wilson Street, and Westview Drive is a series of 15 buildings, 10 of which are to be included in the district, all fronting West Montgomery Street. This block has various important businesses and structures to the city, including the old movie theater at 200 West Montgomery Street, the first and second City Hall at 210 West Montgomery Street and 216 West Montgomery Street, and the former headquarters of the Bank of Villa Rica at 208 West Montgomery Street, the oldest financial institution in Carroll County and one of the oldest in the state of Georgia, which existed from 1899 to 1996. The bank was chartered with $15,000 of capital when it opened in 1899 and was one of the few banks to survive the Great Depression. The bank building served as the main headquarters from 1899 to 1974 before moving to a new building outside of downtown, further down West Bankhead Highway. The movie house at 200 West Montgomery Street was originally part of a parcel known as J.M. Hamrick's lot, who owned the entire block before being subdivided in the early 1900s prior to 1897 and used as a cotton house and general merchandise store. Prior to 1897, the lot was home to Villa Rica Corp's warehouse before it, along with the entire block, was destroyed by fire, which prompted the subdivision. It was bought by W.B. Candler for Candler & Sons General Merchandise. The building was then bought by T.P. Matthews in 1939 and later renovated to a brick block building and used as a cinema house. The building was used in this capacity until 1967 before being closed in favor of a modern movie theater built in a strip plaza further down West Bankhead Highway outside of downtown. The cinema was used by both African American and white audiences, and African Americans sat in the balcony section. The city's first City Hall, which was a small building that was set back from Montgomery Street, was used relatively briefly until a new City Hall was built in the same block at 216 West Montgomery Street, which was in use in the 1920s before moving again to Temple Street on the north side of the railroad tracks. The second City Hall was being used as a restaurant by 1933, according to Sanborn maps. Prior to the construction rerouting of West Bankhead Highway through this block, the block also featured the Velvet Hotel, which by 1933 had become a rooming house. By 1944, the hotel building had been either totally remodeled or rebuilt as a duplex. The hotel, owned by John J. Velvin and his wife, is the only hotel that has ever graced downtown and was used by gold miners and travelers along the railroad, with up to 50 traveling men stopping at the Velvin House during the week by November of 1886, according to an article from the Carroll Free Press. For perspective, the town had 700 residents in the new town and 300 residents still in the old town, which was Hickstown. Other businesses on this block included multiple general and retail stores, an auto repair store, a gasoline service station, and an auto sales operation. The movie house at 200 West Montgomery Street, actually, I think I read that already. So I wanted to actually kind of stop here and go over some of the other things that should be considered as a part of this designation. We have a lot of history, obviously. I mean, I kind of breezed through some of this here, but there's some key things that we should probably pay attention to, and I'll call them out as I keep going here. The cotton warehouses that we had in the city, which is really interesting that we had them in a downtown area back then. A lot of warehouses were on the outskirts of downtown areas throughout Georgia. But we do have some history on that. The historic district includes 6 buildings that served as commercial cotton warehouses. Because of the historic district's close proximity to the depot and the demand for short-term storage of cotton, a significant number and variety of commercial cotton warehouses were built in the first decades of the 20th century. The smallest warehouses appear like typical one-story brick commercial buildings. These include the 2 easternmost buildings in the 200 block of Temple Street. The Masonic Lodge serves the needs of the Masonic Order on the 2nd floor and utilized the 1st floor as a cotton warehouse to take advantage of the lucrative storage business. The largest warehouses in the district are the warehouses along North Carroll Road, or the warehouse along North Carroll Road, the warehouse on Temple Street between the Masonic Lodge and the Municipal Court, and the Pope Brothers Warehouse at 301-319 Temple Street. These warehouses are built of brick and timber posts supporting the wood frame roof. Historically, these buildings included few openings except for the large arched openings that allowed wagons and small trucks to enter and load or unload cotton. The Pope Brothers warehouse, built in 1912 and then nearly doubled in size with an addition in 1949, was rehabbed as loft apartments. The Gold City Hosiery Mill, constructed in 1929 at 135 Temple Street, is among several industrial buildings that were constructed in the historic district. The mill includes a one-story brick building on Temple Street. The Temple Street building was lit by large factory windows and electric lights powered by a separate boiler building, which is no longer in existence, located at the rear of the lot. A second Gold City Hosiery Mill is located on Main Street at the east end of the district. The Main Street building is built of brick with large factory windows, which have since been enclosed, and stepped parapets on the gable ends. And the Camp Cap Company began making hats in a commercial building in the 200 block of Temple Street in the 1930s. The company adapted the small commercial building to serve as a manufacturing facility and eventually expanded into the 4 commercial buildings that occupy the entire block. The exterior of the buildings appear as 4 individual commercial buildings, while the interiors have been joined together to serve the growing company, which continues to make caps, as far as I know. Movie theaters. Villa Rica had 2 movie houses in its history, located at 100 West Montgomery Street and 200 West Montgomery Street. According to Sanborn Maps, the theater at 100 West Montgomery Street closed prior to 1923, and the theater at 200 West Montgomery Street, which was called the Villa Rica Theater, was in operation until 1967. The Villa Rica Theater was constructed in 1941 by T.P. Matthews and features a unique design that is of a rare Art Deco design for West Georgia. This is Villa Rica's only Art Deco building and one of 3 two-story buildings in the district. The design features a brick block building with 2 storefronts below, 2 stucco front facades facing West Montgomery Street and South Candler Street, 8 second-story windows facing West Montgomery Street with large 16-paneled casement windows with 4 paneled transom windows above each, and horizontal line details on the second floor front facade that is characteristic of the streamlined modern subcategory of the international style of Art Deco. The original marquee has been removed in favor of a metal cantilever train shed style awning with exposed arms. The Powell Marchman building and Barry's Pharmacy. Irby Albert Marchman Sr., a local farmer and merchant, and part of the locally significant Marchman family, built multiple buildings in the 100 block of West Montgomery Street between 1895 and 1915, with the Powell Marchman building at 130 West Montgomery Street being the most notable. Dr. Henry Ryan Marchman, the first doctor in Villa Rica, had his offices on the second floor, while Powell Marchman Drug Company occupied the first floor. The building has a highly ornate design featuring a raised corbel and raised window hoods, along with a stucco cornice and pinnacle, 10 large multi-panel decorative second floor windows below 10 4-paneled transom windows. The original building was destroyed in the Villa Rica explosion in 1957, and a single-story building was constructed in its place with no architectural relation to the original. In 2006, the site was renovated extensively to return to the original building's architecture and look. The building is now nearly identical to the original building.
Let me give you a break here.
Yeah. I was a little tired there.
Well, many of them I'm surprised that people are falling asleep. However, it's really important, and it gives you an idea. When I opened up the meeting telling you that it was tedious and frustrating sometimes, but this is all information that, fortunately or unfortunately, the state of Georgia requires. The whole history of it. Many of you I know have been here forever, and I've been privileged to be able to interview people and talk to people for the voices of Villa Rica that I'm interested in, and I'm learning so much about Villa Rica besides just the history of the buildings themselves. So, as I said, it's a long process, and I really applaud you for being so patient and sitting there listening to this when you can actually read it perhaps as well. But it is something that we are required to do, so I wanted to give Ron a quick break.
Yeah.
and to let you know that we really appreciate your patience in listening to all of this because it's required. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. We're almost done, folks. E.T. Doyle and Sons, we did go over some of the basic history of it, but the building is a raised one-story brick block building with a flat roof, recessed signboards with decorative dental brickwork along below and along on the front face of the building below the signboard and a layered brick cornice. The building features a brick porch and steps. The Villa Rica explosion. Villa Rica suffered from a catastrophic explosion in 1957 that was centered on the 100 block of West Montgomery Street that killed 4 people and destroyed 4 buildings on the block. The explosion initiated from a gas line igniting in the basement of the ornate Barry's Pharmacy building and resulted in the total loss of 122 West Montgomery Street, 126 West Montgomery Street, 130 West Montgomery Street, and 132 West Montgomery Street. The explosion was the largest catastrophe in Carroll County history and was devastating to the city. Between 1957 and 1959, the 4 buildings were rebuilt. In 2006, the Barry's Pharmacy building was completely renovated to mirror the original building destroyed in the explosion, which the original building and the current building are almost identical. The original 3 buildings have, or the other 3 buildings have been altered extensively from their previous aesthetics and feature vinyl siding accents, such as on 132 West Montgomery Street and stucco on 126 to 128 West Montgomery Street. The majority of the block is consistent of retail and restaurant uses today. And a little bit about the setting here, because setting is just as important as the actual buildings themselves when it comes to a historic nomination. The historic district includes very little landscaping because the buildings were built to the sidewalk and occupy most of their lots. Lots within the district feature either a building or a paved surface, such as an asphalted alleyway in the rear. Several small street trees planted along West Montgomery Street and in the plaza between Main Street and Temple Street are the only trees located in the historic district. Various plaques have been installed by the city in the past few decades commemorating the Villa Rica explosion and the Bank of Villa Rica. So that is the end of my presentation for the local historic district. So I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay. So we have heard the required narrative of all of that, and believe me, you're looking at 20 pages of just one item and 9 of another, and the actual application is forever and goes on forever and ever and ever. And I'm certainly glad that we didn't have to do it.
No problems there. But we do have also for the public photos if they want to look at the photos that were included in the designation reports as well. They are up here in the front. You're more than welcome to get up at any time and grab them.
Okay. So, we're at the public comment section of the meeting, and we're going to do the local first.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Open for public comment for designating our Main Street as a local district. Please state your name and address.
Rex Camp, 719 Old Tan Yard Road. The property that I own in downtown is 209 Main Street. And I would like to, before I start, comment that he made a fairly decent representation of Camp Cap Company. Not complete, but fairly decent.
Great.
Downtown property owners, mayor and members of the city council, and the Villa Rica Historical Preservation Commission. I'm here today not because I wish to be, but because I feel I must be. In the last 2 weeks, I, as did many others, received a certified mail, regular mail, and hand-delivered mail from the city of Villa Rica. I already knew of the meeting and decided I would not go. But after getting 3 contacts, I knew that something ominous was up. I read all the information and determined that this was not something I could support. I also learned that there are 2 locations that are being removed from the now North Villa Rica Historic Commercial District and the expansion of the district to include all of the downtown on each side of the railroad and will be called the Downtown Villa Rica Historic District. On the surface, this seems to be a benign enough action, but I assure you it is not. I have gathered a petition to present to you, the commission, and the city council to ask that several properties be removed from the current local district and not be considered for any other district that you may decide to fashion. The vast majority of the buildings involved have little or no historic architectural value. Over the years, as they should have been, most of these properties have been repaired and updated to fit the needs of the businesses that reside in them, mostly office and retail. As time moved on, this is a natural occurrence. Around the end of 2014, the Villa Rica City Council decided they wanted to help preserve the historic sites by having an advisory committee to assist any historic property owner that wanted help by having them a resource to do so. Unbeknownst to me, and may come as a shock to some of you here in the audience, the city council decided on making it a commission, not a committee. When the city made it a commission, it put it under Georgia state law. There was not a requirement under the law to do so, but they did it. No real problems were caused until sometime in 2017. A home that has some historic architectural, not necessarily historic site, from my point of view at least, was damaged by a roof fire. This damage sparked the need for a building permit, which someone passed on to the VRHPC, you. Meaning you, not you. Now, as far as I can tell, this was not technically in any historic district. Someone just wanted to give the commission something to do. I am giving this information not for you, the VRHPC, but for those that have an interest in this hearing, just for context. On January the 12th, 2018, my building, known as 209 Main Street, was damaged by a tornado at 7 o'clock a.m. It removed 1,600 square feet of roof and destroyed the majority of my 147-foot long awning. On March the 23rd, 2018, I applied for a building permit. I was told that it would take approximately 2 days to get the permit. Because of the bureaucracy caused by the city of Villa Rica through the VRHPC and the subsequent issues with them, meaning you, the city council had to hear an appeal from me over the reconstruction of my awning. In the end, in my favor. To get the building permit, it took 10 weeks, 4 days, which put the construction in the middle of summer. No property owner should be subjected to this type ever. All this is because the city put themselves under state law unnecessarily. The downtown area as it should, over time, been updated. Buildings should be no different. Many of the buildings that are included have already been updated. The Loft Apartments, West Temple Street, was a cotton warehouse. New style windows and doors have been added to make the space usable. Under the technical aspects of the VRHPC, this should not have happened. The address 126 West Montgomery Street was a dress shop and Reeves jewelry store. The entire front has been changed, and any perceived historic value from the exterior is gone and I must add, should have been. I am not very accepting of change, but if I or any other property owner wants to make changes to their property's exterior, they should be able to do so without any interference from any subset government commission, namely the VRHPC. In all, there have been since The beginning in 2014, only 6 applications known to me through the open records request for certificates of appropriateness, 4 of which was for signs at least, and the last date for that was January 2019, over 2 years ago. Since this is all that they have done and is obvious that there is no need for this commission to exist. And the only reason to try to increase the size is to give them more power and authority over the property they do not own. I have just today received information that this commission is trying to add into the city's ordinance a clause that gives them power over the mayor and city council if upon appeal a rejection or alteration of a COA is overturned or disregarded. This clause, known as abuse of discretion. Abuse of discretion, a failure to take into proper consideration the facts and law relating to the particular matter. An arbitrary or unreasonable departure from precedent and settled judicial custom. This would remove the chance of any COA from being overturned by the city council if it becomes part of the ordinance. The VRHPC would have complete control over your ability to change the exterior of your building in any way. In conclusion, the following locations have signed a petition requesting the removal from and are not to be added to the area to be known as Downtown Villa Rica Historic District. 209 Main Street, 419 Main Street, 105 Main Street, 208 West Montgomery Street, 210 West Montgomery Street, 301 Main Street, 309 Main Street, 305 Main Street, 118 West Montgomery Street. I am in the process of gathering more signatures. If there are any other property owners that would like to add their property to this list and sign the petition, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Camp. I actually was not aware of whatever it was that you said was known to you today, but I do want to clarify that HPC receives from the city proposals for signs or whatever, and we have all gone to sessions to learn about architecture and to check on that. We do not police that part of it at all. What we do is to go along with or not go along with the recommendation from the city and from planning and zoning. I really want to know more about what you mentioned that you learned today, because that's something that we have not heard of.
It was told to me that it was talked about at the work session
A work session.
last week.
I'm sorry, I don't remember,
I
but,
got it from a reliable source, so I mean, as a matter of fact, somebody that was there.
okay, yeah. Well, to add my own personal thing in here, as I said, I'm very passionate and I love Villa Rica. And I came from a town that was, as I mentioned before, a known Markwell town. In fact, it was even in Life magazine for what they did. We even had the first panda in our town. And going back and seeing that it was totally ruined from what it was that I remember growing up. My husband and I lived in Delray Beach, Florida, got married, and there was a vacant lot next to us, and we were too young. We'll be married 59 years next week, but we were too young to buy the lot, or not enough money after we got our house. And there were avocados on it, what have you. We enjoyed that. We just found out about 2 years ago that our home was in the historical district, a mile from the ocean and a couple of blocks from the ocean. And unfortunately, because there was no restrictions or no checking on anything, the house on the corner next door to where I lived is an urban industrial type of building, 3 stories high, that is now for sale, and the monthly payment on that is $16,000 a month. And my husband and I bought our house, it was like $10,500 back in 1963. I'm absolutely worried that sometimes when we don't protect something, that someone could come in with $1 gazillion and buy a whole thing and destroy it and put up something that is very modern and utilitarian and industrial, which would upset the ambience, I think, of Billerica. I am not opposed to changing a window, because obviously windows that were built happen to be a fourth generation DAR. And I know that my ancestors who maybe bought a house or built something in the 1700s certainly would not be able to find the same materials or the same windows to put in their stores or their homes. I think that what HPC in the state of Georgia and some others is saying that maybe try to find something that is like that. But I agree with you, Mr. Camp. Some of these buildings are built to take a look at what they are. And the walkabout that I did with Ron Johnson last week, I have to say that I went into stores that I had not been in at all since they've been changed, and I really enjoyed them. And I took the card for several of them so that I can actually purchase my things downtown, because I believe in that. But I do think that we need to have some semblance of protection against people coming in. Like I said, I've only been here 33 years, but I'm hearing people who have just come in the last couple of years. And I don't want us to be a New York. I don't want us to be a New Jersey. I don't want us to be something that we're not. I want us to be true to what we are, and I'm very proud of that. My whole feeling is that we are not an amazing find. We are a pioneer city. Yes, we had the first gold. Yes, the miners went to California to help them. And yes, it went to Dahlonega because maybe of greed or whatever, I don't know. Maybe the gold, the cotton fields, where I live, happened to be developed by Charles Cole and that area. And I'm very proud of the idea that, Edge Road was named after his grandfather. And I know that where I live happened to have been cotton fields. And I listened to my neighbors who told me about growing up here and how much fun it was to have the cotton and go to the mills, because that was a whole trip for them, even though today it just seems like a couple of minutes away. When the boll weevils came, it was gone. I had a whole bunch of stones in our property, and I actually called the SAR and some other people, because I said, is that a burial mound? I don't know. Somebody's buried underneath those stones. And they said, no, but what happened is, because I live in an area that was cotton field, that apparently the stones were put up as a wind blocker. I learned recently that possibly there's a still on my property, because in interviewing people, a gentleman at Napa told me that a wonderful story about his father who had a still, but he actually put a log on the street to make sure that, or the road going into it, that if anybody moved it, he'd know that somebody was in there. And that one day he went to see his still and discovered that the log was moved. And so he didn't go in. And a couple of days later, there was an ad in the paper for the tractor that he had bought, that he had in there. And he said, I wasn't stupid. I didn't own up to it because I didn't want to be fined. And so, in talking to other people, I've discovered that where I live, there is a small creek, well, we call it a creek, behind us. And so the possibility is that part of that mine, not gold mine, but distillery might be there, and I think that's fascinating. At least it gives my husband and I something to think about, that maybe there was a distillery on our property. These are things that are exciting to me, to know that Eisenhower went down 78 before he was president of the United States. To know that you had John Lewis stopping, with a Freedom Bus. There are so many things that Billerica has to be proud of. It's not just what the building looks like on the outside. We're not a Hallmark channel. But we are something that I think we should be proud of. And I think that we are something that we don't want somebody to come in and buy up a bunch of property and then build something that's atrocious and not Billerica. That's my concern. And I would think probably the concern of some of the other commissioners on here. So that's my 2 cents in there. And, whether I'm right or wrong, I love Billerica. I hope to stay here. As I said, my husband and I on May 5th will be married 59 years, but it was not Cinco de Mayo. celebrated 59 years ago. And
And I think a common misconception is that we're up here on a payroll. We're not paid by the city. We are not hired by the city. This is free. We're up here on our own recognizance, all of us. We all have businesses, homes in Villa Rica, that we are on your side. We're a non-biased opinion of jury of your peers, so to speak. So we're not here to get in your pocketbook. We're just here to help so that the city can't do what they're talking about to you, so that we can help on your side.
If you were a committee, I would have no issue.
Right,
As a commission, that's where I have the issue.
right. Which they have set new
Yeah.
guidelines now, so you don't have that issue that you had before. We have guidelines to go by to make a quick decision, where you don't have to wait. This is kind of quick and easy. And if there's substitutes and guidelines that we can set now that can further along this process a lot better and smoother than it was in its infancy, I would think, back then when you were going through that, which is not us. We're here for you, not anything else. Not for the city.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I know you're trying to tell the truth,
right.
but I don't believe it.
I got you. But I'm a business owner in the city too, and I have a home in the city. Whether you believe me, that's your opinion.
Like I said, it's not,
Right.
Actually, it's not you or you or you or you or you I have an issue.
Right.
It's the commission.
Right.
And I understand that, and I think that, since none of us were on this committee when it was started,
Right.
and I know a little bit more about the history of it, it is my understanding, and I could be wrong, but it is my understanding that in the last few years, the state of Georgia would not allow a main street to exist without having a historical preservation commission, and that's why the name was changed from committee to a commission. That was my understanding. And I don't,
You really don't want to know what I'm thinking.
okay. Are there any other comments? Pro, con? Hearing none, we will end the public comment for that part of it.
Commissioners, at this time, staff is requesting a recommendation either for the establishment of a local historic district in the area as indicated on the designation map in red, or either a positive or a negative recommendation, either or, that would go and move forward to the May 11th City Council meeting. And I would also just kind of, I guess, before we, close this session and move to voting, I would like to also give kind of, I guess, my 2 cents as an urban planner as to why historic districts are of grave importance to communities across this country. We have seen in various areas and various times in the country's history that major landmarks or any historical buildings or districts have been completely obliterated prior to historic preservation even becoming a major topic of discussion in communities. They really do aid with an aesthetic, in improving the aesthetic value of an area. Over time, is not a sudden push. They establish a sense of place, and placemaking is a major topic now in the urban planning world. It has all your favorite downtowns that you like to visit: Marietta, Noonan, Decatur. All of them have a sense of place. You know when you're there when you are there. All of those places are successful. Their businesses are successful. They all have a unique history. They all have a unique architecture about them. And there's just a general sense of community, and it's just really a place that you would actually want to be and spend your time and spend your money and bring your family. And that's something I think that Villa Rica does have attributes of already without a local historic district nomination. I think with a local historic district nomination, you're really taking that to a next level in a sense. We've had a lot of different signs and stuccoing over of buildings and different things that are just simply not in keeping and in kind of these, of not just this single individual building where these improvements would have been placed, but also in the surrounding area and the entirety of the neighborhoods of the downtown. So I guess in closing, you know, it really does, and it has shown over and over and over again that the value of the properties increase. The amount of marketability that you have as a municipality is vastly improved if you do have a historic district for the sense of place and to actually be able to market that to people who are tourists or people who are interested in coming to your city and spending their time and spending their day. And I think that this would be a first step in order to do that. I truly do. I think that I think everyone here today would be very upset and very sad if there was a building or an entire block that was demolished. You can pick any block around here. If it was demolished and something else is constructed, that may not be in kind with the scale and with the size of any other surrounding buildings, I think that everyone in town would be calling City Hall off the hook, like, what is going on? What are you guys doing to the downtown? This is a preemptive step in order, being that the city is growing so dramatically, to be able to protect those assets, because that's truly what they are. They are assets to this community, and they are deserving of protection, in my opinion, as a staff member and as an urban planner. And so anyone can come down to City Hall tomorrow and fill out a demolition permit and demo an entire block tomorrow. And think about what that would feel like and what that would be like for a city like this. It would be truly a true disaster to this community.
It really would. You know, as I mentioned, I'm compiling a book with Voices of Villa Rica, and it isn't so much the building. Remember, HPC is concerned with the external part of it, the footprint of the building itself, not the inside of it at all. But when I go into some of these buildings and I look at the old pictures that are there of what it was, that's the history. It's not so much looking at in the window and the outside. It's taking a look at what was going on inside. It's taking a look at Jane's and seeing what she wrote in there, and having pictures in there. It's the idea that, I'm sorry that Leathers is gone, because my husband and I not only like to barbecue, but I like looking at just the one picture that he had of what it used to be like, you know, years ago. There's a lot of sentimental things in there. I've learned from one lady how she had to stand on a box in order to reach the cash register. I understand that many of our African American citizens were in the movie theater in the projection room, and when I asked other people, they said, oh no, there was never a place for them, but they didn't realize that they were going around the back and up in the projection room. Even though it's not there anymore, there are pictures of it and there's memories of it. And that's, I think, that what we want to preserve are the memories that we have here. Not so much is a building brick, red, yellow, green, whatever. It's the pictures that tell us what we were. And if we don't understand the past, we're going to, like Santana said, if we don't understand the past, we're going to be doomed to create all the horrible things all over again. And we don't need that. We need to keep Villa Rica. And if you've been on the website, you've seen some of the projections for changing it. Maybe we'll have the lights not on Main Street, but in the alley. Maybe we don't have enough parking, but there's a lot of suggestions. And many of you, if you're in the audience or other people, have given us so much information that it's overwhelming, and I hate to lose that. And so, you know, maybe I'm a little bit sentimental, but I really don't want to lose Villa Rica to some company up north coming in in deciding to demolish buildings. And we have asked and proposed to Ron that when somebody comes in with a demolition permit, that we are notified immediately. In fact, it even had in July 19th of 1999, I think it was, in the paper, where it said that we are supposed to be notified if there's going to be a demolition, and we had not been. But the Historical Society informed me that because they have money and donations and support, that they would like to know if there is going to be a demolition so that they can maybe take steps to save the building or to help find grants to move it. And so that becomes an important part of what we're doing as well. Okay.
Ron, I have a question. What would your motion, what does the city, what's the staff's recommendation on the motion?
We're recommending a recommendation to form a local historic district by recommendation to the city council from this commission.
Okay. What is your pleasure?
I'd like to make the motion that the Historical Preservation Commission recommend to City Council to form a local historical district as outlined by staff's presentation.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? It is unanimous.
So that recommendation would be going to the city council meeting on May 11th at 6 p.m. There's also a 3 p.m. work session as well that's open to the public. So if you're available, if you're a property owner, a business owner, or a concerned citizen, you're very much invited to that city council meeting on May 11th. And you can also do a public comment at that time as well if you want to take some time to think about this and even further. So there will be a public comment period at that time.
Yeah, I'd also like to add, it's not just the buildings themselves, and there were some comments about this particular building itself being excluded from what we had. And someone pointed out to us last week, and I said, yes, you're right. We have learned that historical places are not just because they've been there forever, that there also have to be if somebody important lived there. We have Thomas Dorsey. Thomas Dorsey doesn't live here anymore and was only in a house, but we've got a whole street named after him, and we want to have a Thomas Dorsey Museum. Well, this building, and we've told this to Ron Johnson and the others, probably needs to be included in something because the people, the whole bishop people in here have had a great deal to make this important. And so perhaps because of the name and because of what they've done, we should do something to make this be historical as well. Next motion. National now?
National? Okay. So this request actually for a national historic district to be established is going to be much different than what we just did with the local. So the national has a completely different type of process that would need to go under state review. There is multiple different review periods. Tonight, I'm interested in getting some preliminary public comment from people. So we can send those public comments to the state on any or any objections or any interest at all in supporting a national historic district. For the folks who were not able to make the workshop meeting last week, the city of Villa Rica already has a national historic district in the downtown. They have one that was established in 2002 that's only on the north side of the tracks, so where we're located right now, and going all the way down to North Avenue along Main Street and Temple Street. So it's proposed, the staff and the city is proposing that national historic district be expanded to the south side of the railroad tracks between South Carroll Road and Westview Drive, along Montgomery Street, and also one building, which is the E.T. Doyle and Sons feed store on Wilson Street. So with that, with the national designation, of course, there's the possibility for tax freezes on your property taxes. There's a possibility for loans and grants that are very low interest that are set aside specifically for historic preservation purposes. The businesses or the property owners on the north side of the railroad that's already in the existing district area can enjoy those benefits right now, but the area on the south side cannot. And we want to be able to rectify that situation in order to afford everyone in our downtown the equal opportunity to be able to submit for these types of loans and grant schemes and tax freezes and the like. So this is why the staff is recommending to the Historic Preservation Commission from not just a historic standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint for our property owners for a designation to occur in downtown that would expand it. Now, there is one other change that would happen with the National Historic Registered properties. Same thing with the local district, it would be removing the amphitheater property and also the city's, the current building that we're in, the municipal court and the police department, because of the vast amount of changes that has happened to these properties over the years. The staff, when we originally set out to try to move forward with this national and also the local district, we thought that we can continue having those two properties within the district. However, the state has recommended that we actually remove them because they've lost all of their historical integrity. So with saying that, we are looking, because of my phone call with the state this afternoon and subsequent emails, we are requesting that we send nomination materials to them because we received a favorable response to our pre-application back in November of last year. And so we want to follow up on that in a relatively timely manner in order to get it to them to start their review process, which is a 60-day process. And just as a reminder to everyone, and just to, for you to keep this in mind, this is the National Historic District designations are a strictly Historic Preservation Commission task. This will not go to the City Council. In no way will it go to that level. This is actually strictly between the local Historic Preservation Commission and the state as a liaison to the federal government in Washington. So in order for us to reach Washington, we have to go through the state, and they have to do their review periods, which can be take a long time. I would just say that.
Is that the one you was talking about, Ron, that was 6 months?
Yeah, it can be it's like a 6-month process to get through. So it's not easy, and that's not even including the pre-application process that we already went through in the fall. So it can take some time, but I think that it's gravely needed for all types of relief at these really turbulent economic times, because we really just truly don't know what's going to happen with retail in this country. We have X amount of millions of square feet of retail that are in excess in this country right now. We have a very strong downtown as far as restaurants and retail activity. Thankfully, we are truly one of the lucky ones, I'll tell you that. But we need to be able to keep that going. And if a business owner or a property owner needs loans or grants to help fix up their building or to make some type of repairs, they should be afforded that opportunity. This would be coupled with actually and a lot of people don't know this, national loans and grants and things of that nature and tax incentives can be layered on top of the city's rural zone program, which we applied for and received. We're only one of 22 or so communities in the state of Georgia that has a rural zone program, which can also afford money for preservation activities and also the hiring of folks to staff new establishments. So you can layer those on top of any type of national grants, but you can't layer it with any state incentives because there are two state programs. So if you can get any state and national support to help you either fix up a building or with any type of income taxes or property taxes, I think that would probably help a lot of people that own buildings downtown.
Ron, do the national historic districts and the local historic districts have to mirror one another and be
Great question.
identical?
Great
Or do
question.
they allow, and I'll just give you an example, I'm not promoting or an advocate in one way or another. But if for some reason, or not for the reasons that you already stated, that the amphitheater has no historic value per se, and therefore would not qualify for the National Historic District. Since, Villa Rica is a decent-sized city, but our downtown, let's face it, is tiny, and one of the reasons why I feel so desperate to preserve what little we have. But like, on a local level, could you say, well, the amphitheater doesn't have any historic value, but it's such a big part of the downtown now with concerts and crafts, and arts and crafts, and car shows. Would the city be able to designate that as part of the historic downtown?
Yes, so the local historic district and national don't have to mirror one another. They can be a completely different drawn lines, or you can just have a local and not a national, or a national and not a local. I think for the sake of really for the sake of just having conformity in the downtown, and being able to cover as much property as we possibly can, especially for the national, we decided to have them equal to one another on the map. You can see it clearly on the designation map that we want the boundaries to be the same all the way around. We don't just want some properties that were included or not, but it very well can be something that the HPC can entertain if they do want to just have the historic district to only cover certain sections, or pick up more properties than what we've seen tonight. That is certainly possible. Or remove properties too. You can remove some. But I would just keep in mind that, and the state kind of did caution us about this a little bit too. They indicated that when we start removing and adding properties, because removing them and adding them can have the same effect as far as if something is contributing or if it's not contributing. And that is pretty important to the actual property owners, if your property is going to be contributing to the district or if it's not, because the design guidelines booklet is really only are only guidelines, but they're written in a sense that they would certainly cover the contributing properties, but the non-contributing properties that are, for example, ones that have been stuccoed over the storefronts, or there's been just changes to it that really erode the historic value. They could still be in the historic district, but they're going to be reviewed whenever a certificate of appropriateness comes forward. They're going to be reviewed to somewhat of a lesser lesser level of scrutiny than a property that is contributing is, because, I mean, let's face it, if you have a building that contributes to the history of an area and it's being changed, then it's a lot different than being just happen to be located in a historic area and your building is not necessarily historic at all.
Right. That would
So
be,
they shouldn't be treated the same.
because that would be contradictory to the people who are having this historic building, like, hey, I'm in the historic district and I'm historic, why are they?
Yeah, so they should all be in
That's
the
what I
same
think, yeah.
district, yeah.
I think we should just keep them out of it.
So I guess my request is to hopefully be able to send these nomination materials, being that this is only a process that goes to the HPC. This won't be going to the city council. So I would like to get started on the nomination materials, so I do come to you to request permission to do that.
Public comment.
Public comment period.
Do we have a motion?
We need a
Public comment. Public comment.
Public comment first?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Public comment. Pro, con? All right, hearing none, public comment is closed.
All right, I'd like to make the motion for the city of Villa Rica to submit nomination materials to the Historic Preservation Division for listing on the National Register of Historic Places.
I would second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Okay. Thank you.
And just one more thing also, again, being that this process and the reason we had this on the agenda tonight was really to try to collect some preliminary public comment from folks, which is okay because we are going to have another meeting once the state does get back to us with an answer to our nomination forms. So we will have to have another public meeting and a public comment period before we send it back to the state again, so their reviewing board can once again review any additional comments or comments from the municipality or from the HPC directly. All of those things will be involved in their decision-making at the state level. So your voice really, and I'm not just giving you a line, I'm being real serious. Your voice actually really does matter in this process. If you do feel inclined to do so, I really do recommend that you, even if you don't want to do it tonight, you can still write us or drop by City Hall. We can record your comment. And hopefully the state would have a recommendation in either direction for us, hopefully in the next couple months. But we also have in the back of the room, again, we have different objection or support lists that you can write your name on if you feel comfortable with doing that. Again, that list would only be going straight to the city council. It would not be shared publicly outside of a meeting like this, for example. And we can at least be able to come to the city council and know exactly how many people are opposing the local historic district, or if there's people who are supporting the local historic district, we would be able to have that for the city council, and we can be aware of exactly how deep the water is in the swimming pool, right? So I turn it back over to you, Nancy.
Okay, thanks. And again, thank all of you for coming. You have helped us reach a first. We have never had an HPC meeting last an hour and a half before. We're usually out within 45 minutes at the very most. But please do join us, because we also believe that we are an educational commission as well, and we are expecting to have sometimes a speaker. As I said, David is in real estate, Angelia has a business, Alan has a restoration business, Doug restores homes, and Sarah is not here. She has an interest in historical society and knows everything about deeds and what have you. And for me, I just happen to be a retired college professor, English teacher, who happens to be interested in history. So here I am. Anyway, thank you again for coming. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Hold on.
Wait,
I need a first and a second, like.
go ahead, Ron. Go ahead, Dave.
All right, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I second.
He's- I'm sorry. I thought
No, it's
I heard.
fine, it's fine.
Well, I'm always in second.
Can you take that seat and put that?
Yeah, I got it.